This is a process that we utilize within our advisory practice in order to help our clients provide a framework for their ongoing life, both in terms of their investment assets, of course, which is an important part of what we do, and their protection assets, including insurance, but also with regard to how they want to lead their life today and any potential legacy they'd like to leave as well. Just as a start, again, this is Peter Secoso of Sherpa Financial. Sherpa Financial and Woodbury are affiliated as a broker-dealer, but not affiliated with respect to our organizational structure, as we disclose here below. So let's begin with the notion of life design and explain a little bit about how this process works within our practice. There is a concept that we've developed along with our partner firm, Buckingham Loring Ward, that we refer to as a design, build, and protect structure. In this process, we begin with what we call a discovery process in the design phase and develop a framework in order to move forward to support our clients in the years ahead. When we do this, we essentially think about things from the perspective of that initial design work, moving through an implementation strategy in the build portion, and then in the protect portion, we essentially move forward with assessing where we are from time to time and remaining on top of our game through education, which we as advisors follow, as well as share information with our clients. So if we think about the discovery phase where we begin, we are really thinking about several aspects to begin our planning process. We want to think about things from the standpoint of a holistic structure that includes all the different elements that we consider as individuals. And so we work with our clients first in an exploratory phase in what we call life design, and then taking distinct, discrete steps to develop a program that's appropriate for them and moving forward on a holistic basis, engaging with them to ensure that they may have the life they want to lead and they may have the people that they want to protect be protected, and that they may have a comfort in knowing that they've built a legacy as well from all the years of their work and caring for others. One of the things that we think is really critical to understand is that no matter what's happened before, we are where we are. So we begin from a life design perspective with the idea that we are right here in the present. There's not much we can do besides learn from past behavior about what's gone on in the past. So we learn from it, it may influence the future, but there's absolutely nothing we can do to change it. And of course, we know that there's not much we can have total control of with respect to the future. So what that does is it helps us to essentially become grounded in the present. And utilizing an approach that we call life design, we begin with 4 elements of life, which we might consider as the pillars or the dimensions of life that are extremely important to pay attention to. We frame these as work, play, love, and health. And while there are other names you might give these categories or dimensions, or you may even decide to have more of them, the idea is to have a structure or a construct like this that you then can follow and keep track of to determine how you're feeling about where things are in your life. So what we have here is 2 simple questions. You know, where are you today with regard to each of these areas? And if you thought about it, to be fair to yourself, where do you think you are from the standpoint of fully engaged, fully satisfied versus not so much? And if you then were to kind of rate that, you might think about actually coming up with something along the lines of a gauge that says that for right now, I might be feeling really good about certain elements of my life, and others in which I'm perhaps not having as much time to apply to those. I'm not spending as much time on those areas of my life, or there are areas of my life that I feel I can improve. This is along the lines of balance. And while we hear a lot in contemporary literature about work-life balance, for example, we recognize that in reality, it's really a myth, that really what we need to do instead is think about where we are, where we'd like to be, and the steps that we can take to improve the situation, recognizing that from time to time, some of these areas will be in less balance than others because they require, some other area of our life requires more of our time and attention. Now, when we do our planning work, we begin with a concept of needs, if you will, wants and wishes. So what we do is we think about things from the standpoint of goal-based planning. And that means that we begin with the things that are most important, and then we move on to the things that are more idealistic. In psychology, Maslow defined a hierarchy of needs, where we begin with the things that are most important to take care of, our physiological needs, and then ultimately moving up on the hierarchy to things like safety, love and belonging, and then what he referred to as esteem and self-actualization. We think about it from the perspective of those elements of our lives, including our financial lives, which are our needs, the things that are most important that we have to take care of. And then we move to what we might consider sort of middle area, the wants, the things that are a bit more of a stretch, nice to have, somewhat discretionary, although in some cases we may feel, they're also very important. And then ultimately to wishes, those things that we would very much like to happen and that we would feel very good about if they did happen, but we don't really know necessarily today that we can make them happen. They become part of our longer term planning. So when we do this process or put this process together, we think about it from the perspective of a life map. And we talk about it as a 360 process, a 360-degree process, because we begin with an idea or a vision about where we want to be. And it's informed by the values that we hold dear to our hearts, the things that we want to make sure occur. And then in each of those areas of our lives, whether it's family, work, career, our goals and concerns, our health and our wellness, our interest, and things that we want to take care of in the way of causes. And then circling back again, back to our vision, so that ultimately we're able to complete a life map for ourselves that covers each of these areas. Now, as you look at this life map, and I know you've seen it before, these are some of the areas that we work with our clients. And in some ways, if we move from left to right, we might say, you're moving from the things we have to start with to the things that we ultimately would like to get to. And of course, back to what I said a moment ago, we are where we are. It may very well be at this point in our life that many of the things on the left side of this graph are already taken care of. And now what we're doing is really focusing on those on the right. And for others, it may be that we're just kind of getting started, trying to determine what our vision is and trying to determine how we're going to harmonize work and life and creating financial comfort. So we may be more to the left side. The beauty of this process is that we can work with clients anywhere along this spectrum. And in fact, want to be sure that you know that we do work with clients in all of these areas based on what their needs are. So if there is someone, for example, that you feel, especially in a time like this, could really use some direction and support, you know that we can help them in each of these areas. So this particular life map is completely open. It's not completed. Later in our presentation, we'll see one that's completed just to get an idea of how, as we step through the process, where we want to wind up. So let's begin with vision. What do we mean by vision? Well, some questions we may ask ourselves are, what are our plans for the future? What values impact our views about the future? And as we move through life stages, what vision comes to mind in terms of where we'd like to be? In the world of life design, we call that prototyping. This idea that we may be where we are now, but we may have a vision of a different way that we want to lead our lives, perhaps in a different part of our lives, perhaps in a transition period when we move from early stage raising children or early stage relationships to later in life where we may be dealing with other types of work-related and career-related issues, and then ultimately perhaps transitioning to retirement and maybe extending care to other family members, including those older and perhaps those younger, perhaps grandchildren, for example. So clarifying our vision and our future is about helping you to define and plan for your future. Life transition issues, as I mentioned, that can occur, those that we kind of look forward to, those that are unexpected, the sort of plan B scenarios, things like health-related issues or career changes that are foisted upon us, perhaps involuntarily. And then these kinds of disruptions, handling these kinds of elements of our life is also important. So recognizing that we have a plan and that we ultimately also need to have a plan B and perhaps a plan C, so that at the end of the day, what drives all of this would be the values that we want to live as individuals, as family members, as members of our community. Now, I mentioned these criteria of work, love, health, and play, and a way to think about this is, again, through a series of questions. How do we like to spend time when we're not working? How might that evolve over time? What do we enjoy most about our work? Could that potentially change in different phases? Would our work shift, for example, from work that we do as a vocation to perhaps things that we do as an avocation, perhaps volunteer work? And then harmonizing these big rocks of life, this work, love, health, and play, in such a way that we can remain in some type of balance that we're comfortable with, and when we're not in balance, understanding why that is the case. So from the standpoint of some of the things we think about, they might be income generation early on in life. It might be future income sources for later in life. It might be the work that we do today, and it might be service and volunteer work we might do tomorrow. For aspirations, we think about things like what we care about ourselves, what we care about for the people that are in our lives, the organizations that we care about, and the kinds of impact that we might be able to have are all considerations in terms of our planning. And then for ourselves individually, there may be items that are on a bucket list, things that we really want to make sure we get to do as part of our life plan. And these could be activities that we participate in or attend for personal enjoyment, or other types of criteria that we may be looking forward to. Financial comfort is obviously something we work on a great deal. So if there are things that are keeping you up at night, let's figure out how to articulate those and address those. What are the biggest financial, perhaps, mistakes we've made, or those that we've avoided? What aspects of our finances right now feel uncomfortable? How could we improve that? Financial comfort is a focus on how we feel about money and risk. And our role as advisors is related to all those issues involved with money, whether it's wealth management, insurance, protection strategies, tax-related items, and legacy planning. We work with you in each of these areas. When it comes to family, we think about things in terms of who in our family is today really important for us to focus on, and how will they be impacted by various plans that we make today and in the future? What types of other family issues should we consider with respect to those in our family who may need additional support if we're not there to help them, or that may need help today at this time? In what ways would we like to see our families be left with respect to a financial perspective now as well as in the future. So helping and protecting family for us is identifying issues that are important, including children or grandchildren, perhaps education, parental issues, perhaps around caregiving for those members, and potentially even for ourselves, and ensuring in a way that our family is protected to the best way that we can. Health, especially in a time like this, when many of us are sheltered in place, not really leaving the house, trying to make sure that we don't come in contact with a virus, really points to the idea that we need to be taking care of ourselves. While this is always important, it's particularly important in a time like this when we recognize how vulnerable we can be, even when things seem to be going just fine. So what concerns do we have about our health? And what about the health of our family members? And what are we doing about it? Whether it's monitoring our vitals, or whether it's making sure that we have a certain amount of exercise. And with respect to our mental health, what are we doing to make sure that we have time to relax and enjoy life and not be always concerned and always stressed? What changes do we see occurring in our family, perhaps related to health? And how should we address those? What is it that we need to understand about those issues? What plans do we have in place to protect our family, protect our lifestyle in the event of a potential health challenge? So our considerations here are planning for health-related issues and caregiving for others and perhaps ourselves, including locational aspects, family dynamics, and financial considerations. And while it might have been the case just a few months ago that we thought at a later point in life, we may just move from our current location into some type of facility, given what's going on with respect to this particular pandemic, we may become somewhat concerned about moving a family member into a facility and may need to be thinking about other alternatives in order to take care of those who we care very much about. And in our personal situation, perhaps structuring things in such a way to allow us to remain in our current home or a different home so that we don't have to move to a facility, given, again, the current state of affairs and what we've seen with this pandemic. Legacy planning is about not just the future, not just necessarily when we're gone, but certainly it's a component of it. So how is it that we would like others to remember us? What are we doing to make sure that our intentions will be carried out? Are there important organizations, charities, religious organizations, and so forth that we really would like to benefit from our work during our lifetime? Legacy planning is about how you feel about passing on assets to someone else through your will, estate plan, or charitable giving, but it also includes considerations of non-financial assets, including your values, your talents, your life experiences that you want to share either now or in the future with others. And then the what if scenarios, because we can't know what's going to go on in the future. We could do our best to plan, but contingency planning is also an important part of planning. So the questions are, how did we feel about the markets when we had the crisis in 2008? How do we feel now with respect to how well we were prepared for this pandemic? How can we be better prepared for future potential events? And what else should we consider in this what if scenario planning? We use modeling capability, such as statistical Monte Carlo analysis for investment planning. We do scenario planning for income sources and expenses. We look at insurance and other protection strategies and other types of projections as ways that we try to help you with respect to this idea of the what if scenarios. So in summary, our design, build, and protect structure essentially follows several phases: an implementation approach for our various strategies, that begins with a consideration of the things that we talked about. A design your life consideration, utilizing systems and tools such as our financial planning software, Money Guide, our Everplans tool for legacy planning, the fact that we use evidence-based investing for our asset allocation, and very much goal-centric and tax-aware methodologies that are customized for our client portfolios. In the build section of what we do, we're using a broad-based balance sheet approach. We're looking at things in terms of budget, in terms of income projection, in terms of expense projection, and developing a structure to allow us to continue to live the life that we want to live. We have policies to guide us in financial decision making, and we have investment solutions related to asset management to achieve these goals. And in the protect phase, we're essentially on an ongoing basis assessing where we are, measuring ongoing progress towards goals and objectives, identifying new and different ways to help you and those that you care about, continued education on life transitions so that we can understand in terms of where you are, how we can help you explore ways to move you along in terms of transformational changes that are occurring in your life. And lastly, legacy planning and support, both those that we can take together and those that may need the support of others, perhaps professionals such as attorneys for estate planning, wills, and trusts and those sorts of things. So when we think about 360 discovery, we're talking about a vision, we're talking about work and life related elements, financial comfort, and addressing health. All of these come together, and when we do them in such a way that we develop a complete life map, our life map will look a lot more like this as opposed to where we started, so that we have in each of the areas addressed those areas that are most important, so that we've looked at each of these areas from vision to balance of work and life to creating financial comfort to help in protecting family through building a legacy. And in each of those areas, we've taken steps with planning, with programs, with structures, with asset protection in order to achieve those goals. And most importantly, as in anything we do in the way of planning, we have to set priorities. So what specific areas are really important to you that really will require attention, let's say over the next 12 months? And we try to work with our clients in the process of our reviews to determine those areas that are most important, those areas that really need focus so that we can help you in your journey in terms of an overall life map. We also need to think about any concerns, especially any gaps that are in place today, so that we can achieve the goals and objectives we'd like to get to. In other words, thinking about the future state, while we can't completely control it, we certainly can plan for it. As we often say, people don't fail to plan, they fail to plan rather than fail because they want that to happen. So when we think about the whole notion of planning, people don't necessarily plan to fail, but they will fail to plan. And that's essentially what we're doing here, trying to help ourselves in the future by planning as best we can, including contingency planning for the future. And then developing a true understanding of risk tolerance, especially around risks for investments. And I think this is a time that really challenges us, as we've seen tremendous market volatility in the recent period, and it can be very upsetting and unnerving. But understanding where we are with respect to our tolerance for risk helps us a great deal in moving through a period such as this. So with that, I'll end here for a moment and just look to see if we have any particular questions. We do have a chat window which you can type any questions you may have. But know that this is an area of focus for us that continues from throughout out all of the work that we do. And we look forward to working with you both in our review process and specifically in financial planning and modeling to help you and support you in your journey in developing your life plan. So I'll wait a moment more just to see if there's anything further. And if not, then I'll ask you to please get back to us if there's any particular areas of concern that you have. We will certainly be bringing this up in our ongoing client servicing, and certainly wish the very best for you in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Take care, be careful, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the near future, either virtually as we are today, or hopefully in the not too distant future in person as well. Thank you. Take care. Bye now.